value edges for 2025 NRL Fantasy. We're here to talk about Munster. We're here to talk about Luai. Is there any value in Lewis Dodd? I don't think so. Is there any value in a Braden Trindle with him taking over a little bit last year? Tanner Boyd, we've got Cogger, we've got Townsend, the GOAT Townsend from my cows over to the Roosters. So we'll get all into that stuff. But first, kicking it off with Adam Reynolds at 622k, and he actually has a 51 average in 2023. So coming into this year with a 46.6 price point, it means there's obviously something there. But I think between his age, his injury history, and adding another dominant 7 into the mix in Ben Hunt, the risk is just far too high for me with the small potential reward you could get if he does get back to that 51 in those big minute games when he's not getting injured. So Reynolds is a no at this stage. And guys, if you are checking this out for the first time, please do subscribe. Hit follow on the podcast as well. I appreciate you guys checking those out. It's growing just as I would like it to, so thank you very much. Cam Munster. Alrighty, so he has 2 injury-affected minute games last year. He had 40 as a starter and 50 as an interchange, and that does bring the average down a bit. You take those games out, it actually brings him to a 47.9, which at this stage is 3.8 points of value. And there's also three games in there where he played close to 70 minutes, so high 60s, 70, 71, that kind of range there. Munster just carried a massive hip issue last year. He carried it into the season. He spoke about it, he'd only be 70, 80% in that season, and he basically scored close to 80% of what he normally does, and in some seasons was about 65 to 70% of what he has done. So we're looking at him as having an over 50 average in 80-minute games last year, even when he played injured. He played injured on one leg, as he said in one of his interviews there. The off-season surgery has him returning with a lack of preseason, but it sounds like he already feels much better, and it's obviously likely that he would improve off that when he was like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to play. I'm going to be 70% if I play. Like, this is all the chat in preseason last year. And none of that is great news coming into this season either, that he's got an issue that requires him to say things like that I was actually on one leg. So there's definitely some potential worries, but does the upside outweigh the negatives that he's displayed? Let's go through it. So the buy round 2, that's obviously something that you do have to think about, and the question is, can you cover that easily with any half cheapies or Clearys and these types of guys? Nico Hines that we spoke about in last video. And what really excites everyone in picking him is the 55 average in full games in 2023, the 62 average in 2022. So that's just the previous 2 years when he was fit and firing, and he's very much close to a 60 guy in previous seasons to that. 2021, which was high scoring across the board for attacking weapons. So with that, if he was to go back to 2023, disregarding 22 but knowing it's there, you got a 55 average, and you can expect that if he's fit, I think, as a somewhat minimum. Anything in the 50s would be minimum, with potential to get to mid 50s and high 50s if things are going right in again, a very, very good team. So personally, I think it's hard to pass up, but you do have to add in the injury risk and him not being close to 100% like he was in 22, 23, that type of realm. Let's just say he's at 90%, then you're probably looking at a 50, which has him 6 points of value, and use him as a looper in round 2. It's probably the question around with Munster is, what other Storm players can you take in there to round 2? I think at 589k, it's not too expensive to take through. Also think if you just had Harry Grant only at that price point, over 700k, it's not terrible either. But if you were to add a Grant, a Munster, if you're looking at a Jack Howarth, all these types of players there, it can become a little bit more difficult. Ryan Papenhuyzen, these types of guys that you might be interested in. If you're taking 3, I think it's difficult. If you're taking 2 of them, I think you can get through fine, given you'll be able to do some nice looping with the other 19 players. So you've got 2 guys out that you can loop easily with, and utilize the 19 players and make sure that you get the best 17 out of 19. That would be my theory going into it. I do think it'd be tough to, especially when we want to start really well, to have 3 players on the bye. And then if you do happen to have a concussion, an injury or something like that, which is likely to happen out of You take those 3 out of the bye, that's 18 players. It's very likely that one of them will get injured or something will happen in that round 1, and then you are trading out of necessity rather than by choice. Where those guys, if they're out for 1 week on HIA, you might go, oh damn, I need to trade them to get the points. So you don't want that type of thought, I think, in round 2. Something that if they, you had 3 of these guys on a buy in round 9 or round 8 or round 7, 10, that type of range, you're likely to have been able to plan ahead and sell, or one of them gets injured, or they've got to their peak price or something like that, and then you can move them on from that point. So Cam Munster, a really fun pick to begin the year, and I'm contemplating what I do with him personally. I still haven't made my squad, and I will be doing that and posting that in the private group by the end of the week. And guys, won't be showing my clear, full team as it stands each week. I'm doing that in the private group. You're going to get a video from mine saying the guys I'm 100% locked in on. I think at this stage of the preseason, that video will come out soon, but I'm just going to be keeping my actual team to the private crew. And we can discuss things, strategy, and all that stuff in there, which will be awesome. So all that information, if you're interested in the private group, prizes and everything in there. Lots last year. We got up to $5,000 last year that was given away. So jump in the description for that. Jerome Luai at 589k, 44.1 is the price. And I do think we have to compare him to Munster. The main difference in the buy schedule is the Tigers go for a long time without one. And with Munster, you have the round 2. So that's something to think about for sure. But I do think you need to look past the buy and look more to the chances of Luai scoring really well. So the big difference between the two is the first players in a while that I think we can compare really easily because they're the same price. Munster has years and years of playing and scoring really, really high, 50 plus, 60 plus at times. Luai does not have that. He obviously changes from having a guy next to him in Cleary, one of the best players to ever play this game, compared to, and just a different style of player, I think Luai is, compared to Munster. Munster will kick a little, they're probably going to kick about the same amount, but when you've got Cleary as the most dominant guy and you've got Hughes as a little bit more of a running 7 compared to an organising guy, that's sort of the main difference there with those two. And Munster is a better player, straight up. He's done more on the bigger stage across finals and obviously in Origin as well. Luai is continuing to build on that incredible legacy. Just crazy to compare two players like that. They've both won so much, so very high up there. So for Luai, he comes to the Tigers with plenty of expectation. I said he trades Cleary and his dominance and team dominance to Galvin, who still has a pretty decent usage rate, likely. Did last year as a rookie, and I expect him to demand the footy for sure. And he goes to the Tigers where we're unsure on how dominant they are going to be as a team. So you go from the best team in the comp to one of the lower teams. You're going to have to step up. How does that translate? So let's go without Cleary and the stats. In 2024, he had a 50 average, so it was 12 games, and he averaged 318 kick meters. I think that kick meter tally seems fairly solid. If you can get a couple hundred out of Galvin, who we spoke about in the guns video there. In 2023, it was 3 games for 48.7, only 156 kick meters, so he did have someone else to dominate that section. And then in 2022, he averaged 41.3 in 3 games and 84 kick meters. So again, having a more dominant kicker next to him. I am expecting it to be more like 2024, as I said, with the kick meters there. And that is a bigger sample size as well. And he had a couple of massive games, to be fair, 90s and the like. Let's go to his halfback stats. In 2024, 56.9 was the average there with 8 games, 3 tries, and 366 kick meters. These stats feel to me like literally everything was going right. I think the normal feels closer to that 50 mark in 2024 without Cleary, where he can become the slightly more dominant kicker in general play, which means he's going to have more attacking kicks as well to provide some try assists. He'll have his hands on the ball that little bit more. I don't think it'll be a crazy amount more because, they will both use Cleary and Luai plenty. He's got a lovely, short kicking game, the grubbers and everything like that on that, that side, that left-hand side for Luai. will be helpful. But again, he doesn't have the absolute jets on his outside that he had at the Panthers. Although if we can get guys like Dewey on the park for longer, that would be helpful. They've got Justin Olam, who has plenty of great games in him. And depending which side he goes, like if Galvin sticks left, then maybe it's right hand side for Luai, which would be like an Adam Dewey, I'd imagine, with Olam on the left. And does he have Seyfarth next to him? Which I don't know if that helps my Seyfarth narrative. I think I want probably want him next to Galvin, but I doubt that'll be the case with unless Galvin switches sides, which would be interesting for sure. So I also have this feeling that Tigers start hot, then they fall off a bit. So for a 5-round average, I am expecting somewhere between that 45 and 50. So definitely some value, but how much value is going to be the question. With Munster, we can easily see mid 50s happening, but with Luai, it feels closer to 50. And if the Tigers happen to explode, then it's closer to 55. But we don't know a few of those things. There's not a big enough sample size. There's no sample size with him at the Tigers, where there's plenty of sample size with Munster at the Storm. So I can see why you're going for Munster in this scenario. If Munster wasn't there, would you pick Luai? If Munster was 750k, you're probably not picking Cam. And would that make Luai at 589 a better prospect? Maybe just ask yourself that. And if the answer's still no, then it's definitely a no. If it's like a maybe, I think it's still a no. If it's a that'd be really that'd be a different prospect for sure, then do consider him for your side. Tom Dearden, 580k for him, 43.5 the average, and I got a little bit excited about him. I was like, oh, he's going to be the main guy, but he just doesn't kick the footy at all. 47.4 average last year with Clifford, which had 1 try, 1 assist per game for 5 games, so not crazy, but only a small increase, obviously, on that average. I do think it becomes a little bit more interesting if Duffy were to get the 7 jersey and it wasn't Clifford, more for the fact I think the dominancy that Dearden could have in that setup compared to Clifford, who has played a fair bit in first grade, and we've seen what he's been like with other combinations, but we haven't seen that with Duffy, who kicks 73% of goals, I think it was, when I just did the analysis last night. But he's one of those guys that is a really young, talented player, Duffy, but I do think that Dearden could take over a bit more. But again, does that get him to closer to a 50 average? But then you pull back a little bit with the Cowboys' chances not being as strong. He doesn't have Val Holmes next to him anymore, for example, to help him get lovely try assists and the like. Tamati Martin, 576 for him. He's such an interesting prospect, just with how well he did exactly last year. We did just get the news yesterday that we're likely to see, in that combination, Tamati Martin playing 6 and Luke Metcalf playing 7. So does that make Luke the more dominant kicker in general play? And if that's the case, it does water down these stats a little bit. But a 51.1 average at halfback last year gives him 8 points of value if that's how they played it again. But, as I said, with Metcalf being there, he was injured for a lot of last year. He got the spot at the start to partner SJ. I doubt that he ends up anywhere near that 51 unless situations change. He definitely played his career best footy for that month or so. But he had 3 tries in the 8 games and 4 games with 3 or more assists in that 8 games, which is pretty wild. 65 was the high though, so it's not like there's a tremendous upside on him game to game, and the 285 kick meters in that could drop as well if it's next to Metcalf. I think he could definitely do well again, but Boyd is around, or Metcalf. One of those two are going to goal kick. So, and likely be the more dominant player in this side. Isaiah Katoa's next, guys, at 552k, 41.3 the average. And I mentioned him in one of my early videos. I think he'll outdo his average from 2024. He'll definitely outdo 2023 of 29.6. And then in 2024, he was 43 as a starter. So he had 1 game off the bench right at the end. There's plenty of ways I think he can improve and get him closer to the 50 mark. He had a 0.1 try rate, 0.5 on the assist. He had 3.1 missed tackles. He had pretty solid run meters at 82, to be fair, but only 0.8 tackle breaks. So there's definitely room for improvement there. He's still young. and he's growing into his body. He came into the league as an 18-year-old. This is his third season now. I do expect an improved season for Katoa, but how much and how soon? Can he get closer to a 50 in the early rounds, or I personally do expect it to come through the middle and towards the back end of the year, where his stats start to really improve. But if you do start with him, I don't think he'll go too far under 41 in like a 5-game expectation. But it's hard to see him going a 46 or 47 from ball one in a team that should be solid without being spectacular. Mr. Dodd, 550k, wholly expensive. I think you just have to pass just on that. But do watch him and see what happens to start the season. Does he actually get the spot? There's still a little bit more chatter around that Humphreys is a good shot for that 7 jersey as well, which we'll have to speak about when we get to the cheapies with Mr. Humphreys. What's wild is he's almost Munster price. 550k when you got Munster and Luai at 589. So it's a no from ball one, but he's a good runner of the footy, very pacey and very exciting to watch. So let's just watch him in the trials and enjoy that for what it's worth. All right, home stretch, guys. We've got Jake Clifford in there at 525k. 49.3 was his average in 4 games as a halfback. He did have an 84 in there though. So if you take, you bring that back to normal levels, and it's like an early 40s thing. But you do have to kind of note that he can get to that 84, which guys like Tamati Martin couldn't. Only had a 32 average in 2022 and a 42.7 average in the higher attacking stats 2021 season, which is a little bit of an improvement, but shows that 49 in 4 game sample size is pretty hard to go with, to be honest. He feels too risky with the Cows, not likely being improvers in my books as a Cows fan. But I do think he can get into that early 40s without being too helpful for your side. Cody Walker, 515k for him. It's a tale of on off. 2024 was that 38. We had 2023 was 45.9, which is great. 2022 was 38.8. So if you're looking at 2 of the last 3 years with the same average, is Luai, plus he's getting older. The question is, do you play the runs? Maybe. He got down to 449k last year and brought it back up to 603 during their little run when guys like Cook and Koloamatangi were doing well also. And he actually has a similar average with and without Latrell. I think 1 year was a couple of points better, 1 year was a couple of points worse. So that doesn't change too much for him. We know Latrell can be very dominant, but sometimes they can work together and either set each other up in any case. So Walker, fairly cheap, but the age is worrying me, and his 38.8 a couple of years ago, and if he gets what he did in 23, it's still only 7 points of value, which is that I think for me that's everything going right. All right, Trindle, 510k for him. Similar to Hines, it's going to be hard to work out. We just had the Nicho Hines section earlier today, and make sure you do go check that out. You've got guys like Burton, Fogarty, who I'm super excited about as well. Burton, that is, more than Fogarty. But it's still hard to work out how this is going to play because Nicho Hines was injured for a couple of games there. Trindle really played well in that back half of the year. So do they go left more? Do they go right back to Nicho Hines? Do they both kind of drift side to side and just do they have a lot of points in them and they're going to win a lot of games? And therefore, he usually does well in those games. But in 2024, he averaged 49.3 in 7 games, which included 4 tries and 358 meters. This is all at halfback in those 7 games. So 4 tries out of 7 games is a lot. Can you expect that weekly? No. 358 meters. Can we expect that all the time? Probably not. I think with Nicho being more fit, he should get a lot of those meters back. In 2024, he was fairly terrible at 6 in 10 games. He did have 6 tries in that time and still was not great, considering he averaged 38 for the year, 49 in his halfback games. That means that he was well under that in his 6 games, but had 60% try scoring rate with the 265. And I do expect those type of meters to be a little bit more normal, splitting sort of 350 to 400 if they get that many kick meters. But somewhere there, 3 to 350, 400 with Nicho. In 2023, he had 4 games at 7, averaging 48.3. So he can definitely do it if he's the 7, for sure. But is that... Yeah, well, that one, obviously, with those 4 games weren't with Hines. He came in and was dominating before Nico Hines was ready. And it was with Moylan as well. So what you're looking at is his improvement last year, and does that continue? But there's a lot of tries in his game. He seems to be in the right spot at the right time, but if that dries up a little bit, then his average does falter. With and without Hines, it was a 31 at 6 there, and 32 at 7. So it's a bit scary as Hines was coming back from injury last year to suit those above numbers as well. So that's something to think about there in that scenario. That's for sure. Tanner Boyd, 497k for him. 37.2 was last year's average. And, geez, it's awkward. That's for sure. 41 average in 2024 in full games. So there's almost 4 points of value there. In 2023, average 46.3 as the halfback. And you're thinking about him playing with Kieran Foran a lot, which, you know, he'd take some kick meters, but not a lot. He would obviously demand some footy, given he's a very important player. But the Titans very attacking focus. The Warriors a little bit more defensive minded and don't put on as many points. If you watch a Titans game, they're putting on points. So he had that to be a part of in that scenario, and that also means that you can be sitting behind the 6 waiting for someone to kick a conversion, whereas we know he's a fairly decent defensive minded guy in the mid-20s in tackles a lot of the time. So I don't think it changes too much. A little bit more on the defensive side, probably a little bit less on the attack, but that's the question of if he actually gets the start. At the moment, he's not in this first team, but I believe he was carrying a niggling injury, so I've been told. Him and one of the other boys, they weren't available for this first trial. So there's that. I think it would be a similar situation with him kicking goals at the Wars, but if it's him and Metcalf, then there's a good chance Metcalf could kick. He's a strong goal kicker himself. So is Boyd. But Webster has mentioned he was nice depth to have, in quotation marks there. So it's a tale of 3 halves. Is the spot safe? Does he get it? Got to watch the trials, but he's not going to be playing the first one. So let's see how Metcalf goes, and if he plays well at 7, I expect him to get the spot. 2 to go, guys. Jack Cogger, 453k. Let's just rubbish the Fletcher Sharp at 6 narrative. Barry Tui came out and said, highly unlikely, to when someone asked, what's the go with Sharp potentially playing at 6 this year, as the leaves just fall into my backyard on the deck. It's literally covered at the moment. Sorry to be distracted. They're just flying off out my window right now. But so that's been poo-pooed. So flick Sharp as 6 thoughts. He's definitely a great winger. So it does leave the spot open for a Cogger to get in here. We're not sure where things are with the Hastings. We've got guys like Will Price. We've got Gamble. There's lots of guys that could play in those halves. So that's where it's definitely risky. But if he does get the spot, we have a decent little set of numbers. So in 2024, as a half starter, 6, 7, didn't matter. He has 8 points of value. 41.8 was his average. So 33.9 up to 41.8 there. Is that actually right? Does he? Yeah, he's down, correct. It's Townsend that has the drop. Don't know why he got a drop in price, surprisingly there. But yeah, so 41.8 as a half starter with the Knights. When he was with the Panthers, it was a 47.1 average as a half starter, which is a massive, 13.2 points of value, which would be great. So I'm definitely interested in Cogger if he happened to get the spot, but there is definitely some risk. The stats say that if he gets the spot, he's a great pick, but does he get the spot? That's the big question with Cogger. So keep him in your thoughts, see what he looks like if he's named in the trial or whatever's happening next week. But we know that they change their halves partners as often as I change my undies, and don't take that literally, because that would mean they change it every 3rd week. I definitely change them a little bit more than that. But Townsend, 450k to finish things off. 36.8 average in 2023, 36.4 average in 2024. Lol. He's priced a tick over 33, so for me it's not worth it for potentially a couple of points of value, and he's likely to share some more kicking with Sandon Smith. Didn't kick the ball too much. So I'll leave that one there, guys. That is Chad Townsend finishing off the value halves for 2025 to look at heading into round 1. If If you are looking for my half rankings and my strategy in this position, please think about jumping in the private group. All the good stuff is down there, guys. I've been helping players in a private group there for, this will be the 3rd year now, and last year we had 8th, 9th, 21st, and 26th. So out of 200 people in 150,000 teams that played last year, I think that's pretty good going. So come and get those tips, be in line for prizes and everything like that, and have an enjoyable season with your mates that all love NRL Fantasy. Thanks for this one, guys, and we'll catch you in the Cash Cows video.